this? Okay, the original Elks Camp for boys. The Elks camps throughout the Southeast would, each Elks club would sponsor a boy or several boys or whatever to go each summer to the Elks Camp, which they founded in 1945 here in Henderson County, but the original camp was in the watershed, right, Bob? And when they built the watershed in the 1950s, they moved the camp here. Where was it in the original watershed? Was it across the street? Or
just when you turn in that upper driveway that goes in front of the dining hallway, it made a bend around to the left, and it was kind of out that bridge.
Okay, so they had to move it here in the 50s when Greenville took the land for their watershed. So this was the Elks Camp for boys, and hundreds of us local youngsters, as high school kids and college kids, worked summers here. They, on the work-study program for the university scholarships, this was one of the designated sites where they would send us to work. Sam worked here 2 summers, I worked here 1 summer. How many summers did you work here?
Never worked here.
You didn't, your daddy was in charge. His daddy was in charge.
That's probably why.
He knew better than to hire me.
So there's a lot of young people in the community, well, they're people my age and older, who have a lot of memories of the Elks Camp, because most of us local kids were the counselors and the kitchen staff and all that kind of thing, and leading the hikes and doing all that. So they hired the local young people as counselors, and that was why everybody loved this camp so much. Because a lot of these other summer camps around here ignore our local young people, and they hire counselors from Alaska and California and New York and everywhere else, and they don't hire the local people. And I always thought that was very odd that that's the way it goes. Today, this camp, the Elks Camp, closed their camp here in the Southeast, and the Talisman programs bought it, and Doug Smathers is the director, and he knows we're here today, and I left a message yesterday. He was supposed to come out and talk, but he's not here at the moment. The Talisman programs is a nationwide program, and they work with special needs children that are ADHD, autistic, Asperger's syndrome, those kind of disabilities. And it's a non-profit thing for those type of young people, children and young people and teenagers and even college age. So that's what this camp is today. It's part of the Talisman programs. He said if anybody wanted to walk around the camp and remember your past teenage memories, you're welcome to do that, and he gave us permission to do that. The Greenville Watershed area, of which I keep talking about, is across the street. It's behind us. We pass the Corbin Mountain Road that leads up to the old fire tower on top of Corbin Mountain. Is that fire tower still there? It's still there? So that's up there on Corbin Mountain. So the Confederate breastworks are down this way, and we're going to walk across the street, and I'm going to point out all that watershed area. The old Saluda Indian Path came up through what later became the old Buncombe Turnpike and the old Buncombe Wagon Road, then Turnpike, and it is up through that watershed area. Because of the watershed, they moved the road where it is now, right here. So this isn't the exact road. That's why during class I keep saying it's parallel to the old US 25. It's parallel to the old US 25 because it went up more in what is today the watershed. Double Springs Baptist Church is right down the road on the right. It was founded in 1871. And right up here on the left is what we call the Bartlett Ward Cemetery. That Bartlett Ward, the Ward family owned a lot of this land, and he gave the land for the Double Springs Church. There was a one-room school there. Double Springs Baptist Church now takes care of the Bartlett Ward Cemetery, so it's a part of that church cemetery now, and they're using it. Double Springs Church is named because there's 2 mountain springs that come up right in there to supply the water for the church, and may still supply the water for the church. What else? And so in that Bartlett Ward Cemetery, if you look on the website, there's a lot of Civil War veterans in there and a lot of historical figures, and it's still being used. The road built by Solomon Jones starts down there at Jones Gap State Park. If you go on down Old 25, and I guess if you go down the 4 lane too, it'll give you directions to turn to Jones Gap State Park. Is that correct? I just drive. I don't pay attention. and if you go up into Jones Gap State Park, and you can actually hike the old road that Solomon Jones built that goes across the mountains over into Transylvania County up near Cedar Mountain, up in that area.
Yeah.
And then it went down along Crab Creek into the Crab Creek community, and that's kind of part of what is that Crab Creek Road now down in that section. Solomon Jones himself, when he was building that section of the road, lived down in Greenville County, South Carolina, so some of the censuses will have him down there. His home later in life was on Mount Hebron in Laurel Park, and that's still standing, so we'll see that when we do Laurel Park and Goodwill up in there later in the spring. He was the son of Thomas Jones, who, along with John Jones Sr., were the first two Joneses in Henderson County, out in the upward Dana area. And I've never understood why they put a Solomon Jones development out in upward Dana, because Solomon Jones never stepped foot in upward Dana. He lived over here in Big Willow and Greenville, South Carolina, in this section down in here. But he is called the road builder.
And there's a Solomon Jones Road.
Yes.
Different Solomon Jones.
Is that right?
Great grand nephew.
Ah, thank you.
Cap's post office was also right here at the state line. Somewhere right in here. You know exactly where it was? Well, the Cap's post office there, I mentioned it. It was right down in here, and it was a 2-room log structure, and I got a picture of it that I'm going to try to get on my website soon. And it was right here, and it was called the Cap's post office. So that gives you an idea of all the old families that lived in here. And we're going to walk across the street. I want to take you to that trailhead now that I talked about in class the other day. And I just wrote a story on it because the Hendersonville Times-News and the Hendersonville Lightning and no other newspaper, Bullseye, or anybody else in Henderson County has done a story on the new trail that goes through what used to be Henderson County and is now Greenville County, South Carolina, that you can now actually walk through the watershed for the first time since 1953. And you can actually walk on a part of the old Buncombe Turnpike and the old Saluda Path. You're going to walk all the way to the top of Vance Mountain, which the foot of that mountain was where the Carson Dance Duel and the Baxter Irwin Duel actually were. They weren't where the state historic marker is because they couldn't put the state historic marker in the watershed. So you can actually walk that now, and I am so excited. But I'm not going to walk it because it's 9 miles from there to Mountain Page. But you could, and they say the climb up Vance Mountain is extremely steep. But it is now open for hiking. You can start here or you can start at Mountain Page. For those of you who are on our Mountain Page field trip, we went up to Piney Grove Baptist Church, and across the street was Orchard Lake Campground, and we were there at the Greenville Watershed. Well, the trail begins and ends there also. So the trail begins and ends there, and it begins and ends here, and you're going through Mountain Page, Henderson County, Mine Mountain Road, Mountain Page Road, to Heatherly Heights Road. From Heatherly Heights, all that's Henderson County. You can also get on the trail of Heatherly Heights. You can walk from Heatherly Heights all the way down to here through the watershed now. And that was all Henderson County. Yet, Greenville County, South Carolina, all their newspapers, Spartanburg County, South Carolina, all their newspapers, and Polk County's newspaper did huge stories on this, and Henderson County's does nothing. And the whole trail is in what used to be Henderson County. So I submitted that to the newspaper, but I haven't seen them publish it. They probably won't. But anyway, that is, we're going to walk across there because I'm extremely excited about that. Now there's another trailhead that the Powell Valley Trail is open from Piney Grove Baptist Church at Mountain Page that you can get on there and walk through the watershed through Dark Corners, famous moonshine country. Statons and Paces and all my moonshining ancestors. So it goes down through that part of the watershed that used to be Henderson County, and then it connects with Greenville County, and that's what we call Dark Corners, Polk County, Henderson, Greenville, Spartanburg. And they've opened up a trail down through that section too. So it's all really exciting. We can walk over here and see these signs too.